Hi everyone, my name is Arthur Leonard Piatos and the topic that was given to me was Rizal's last trip abroad. So, first slide. Rizal volunteered as military doctor in Cuba. Rizal received a letter from Governor General Blanco on July 1st, 1896 wherein he is going to Cuba as a physician to the Military Health Corps. Regular wanted Rizal to volunteer as military doctor in Cuba. His stay in the Pitan remained uncertain. So what did he do during his stay in the Pitan? He prepared the soil and planted rice, corn, abaca, and many fruit trees. And he also practiced his profession as physician and eye surgeon, constructed residential and little hospital houses, and also assisted to the beautification of the public square. He complained to his sister, Trinidad, through a letter that he was beginning to feel ill and too much work and little nourishment. So, next slide. Katipunan founded by Bonifacio had thought of a plan to rescue Rizal. So, Bonifacio and two associates also tried to rescue Rizal from a Spanish ship in Manila Harbor in the summer of 1896. So he did not approve this idea as in the first place Rizal refused to join and lead the Katipunan. So what is the reason behind and why was Rizal objected to Bonifacio's plan? So Dr. Rizal objected to plans the country in a bloody revolution. He also opposed to the plan that the Katipunan would rescue him. Jose Maria Basa, his friend from Hong Kong, wrote a letter to help him obtain pardon in Madrid, but the case of Rizal could only be arranged in Manila. So what were the allegations to him? Rizal was accused of establishing or founding the illegal association that initiated the revolution. Next slide. Regular wanted Rizal to volunteer as military doctor in Cuba. Like I said earlier, Spanish forces needed doctor due to outbreak of the Cuban Revolution. By this, Rizal could leave the Pitan and could prove to the authorities that he deserved to be pardoned. Blumentritt considered this is a good idea and wrote a letter to Rizal. So next slide. In November 17, 1895, Rizal wrote a petition to General Blanco to volunteer as physician in the Spanish army in Cuba. And he told Blumentritt for his enlistment in November 20, 1895. In November 21, 1895, he informed his mother. The next slide. Application. I will read the statement. I no longer plan to go to Cuba, since more than 6 months had passed since my application. I received your letter of the 14th instant and I understand perfectly your and father's fears about my going to Cuba. However, as you will say, we should have faith in God. Until now, He has saved me from all dangers. Why will He not save me from others in the future? Next slide. In another letter, he told his parents, "Don't worry about anything. We are all in the hands of divine providence. Not all who go to Cuba die, and finally one has to die. At least my one died doing something good." That was he wrote before he died to his parents. The next slide. July 1st, 1896, Rizal application was approved. So I will read the statement. I have made representation with the government in connection with your petition, and acceding to your wishes, have no objection to your going to Cuba as a physician to the Military Health Corps. If you still wish to take this step, the commandant of the Pitan will issue you a pass from coming to Manila, where I shall, on my part, issue you as a passport for the peninsula. There, the Minister of War will commission you Cuban Army. So, next slide. Rizal leaves Dapitan, July 31, 1896 in midnight. So, Rizal finally left Dapitan on board the steamer España, accompanied by his sister, Narcisa and Josefa, a niece and 3 nephews. A trip was rushed because of their desire to catch Isla de Luzon. Their stopovers. One is Dumaguete, then Cebu, Iloilo, Capiz, and Romblon. So, how did he ended his exile in Dapitan? In exchange for transfer as military doctor in Cuba. So, next slide. Arrival in Manila Bay, August 6, 1896. Rizal arrived in Manila. Unfortunately, the mailboat Isla de Luzon left a few hours before their arrival. He was transferred and stayed to cruiser Castilla while waiting to be transferred to another ship. Detained but not to be imprisoned. So at dawn, the España entered Manila Bay. He was not able to depart immediately for Spain because the Isla de Luzon, which Rizal was supposed to board, left the day before they arrived at Manila. Okay, so let's proceed to the next presenter.
Outbreak of the Philippine Revolution. On August 26, 1896, the cry of Balintawak was raised by Bonifacio and his valiant Katipuneros. The cry of Balintawak occurred on August 26, 1896. The cry defined as the turning point when the Filipinos finally refused Spanish colonial dominion over the Philippine Islands. With tears in their eyes, the people as one put out their cedulars and tore them into pieces. An alternative definition of cry as the birth of Filipino nation-state involves the setting up of a national insurgent government through the Katipunan with Bonifacio as the president in Banlat, Pasong, Tamo on August 24, 1896. After tearing the cedulars but before the first skirmish. This was called the Haring Bayang Katagulugan or Sovereign Tagalog Nation. On August 30, revolutionists attacked San Juan. The Battle of San Juan del Monte took place on August 30, 1896. It is considered as the first battle of the Philippine Revolution, which sought Philippine independence from Spain. The first battle cry of Katipunan coincided with the pealing of church bells at 9 o'clock on the night of August 29, 1896. On the evening of August 29, Bonifacio, with his aide Emilio Jacinto, led a group of Katipuneros towards El Polvorin, a Spanish powder magazine situated in San Juan del Monte. Spanish infantry and artillerymen armed with German Mauser rifles guarded Polvorin. The Katipuneros were generally armed with bolo knives, a few assorted guns, bamboo spears, and anting-antings. Then, Governor General Blanco proclaimed a state of war in the first 8 provinces. These provinces are Manila, Bulacan, Cavite, Batangas, Laguna, Pampanga, Nueva Ecija, and Tarlac. On his way to Cuba on August 30, 1896, Governor General Blanco gave Rizal 3 letters. 2 letters were addressed to the ministers of war of the colonies the colonies. The other one was for him. So, The letter General Blanco sent Rizal says, "The Commander-in-Chief of the Army of the Philippines, Mr. Rizal, my dear sir. Enclosed are two letters of the Ministers of War and Colonies which I think will be well received. I have no doubt that you will justify me before the government by your future behavior, not only for your word of honor but because of the present happenings must have shown you palpably that certain actions which are the product of foolish ideas yield no other result but hatred, destruction, tears and blood. May you be very happy is the wish of your attentive servant who kisses your hand. Ramon Blanco." So on September 2, 1896, Rizal was transferred to steamer Isla de Panay. Rizal was transferred on the boat Isla de Panay at 6 o'clock in the evening. He was met by the captain of the boat, Captain Alemani, and was given the best cabin. Later, he wrote a letter to his mother informing her of his good health on board the ship. He informed his mother of his departure for Cuba, comforting her with that everybody in this hands is in the hands of the divine providence. To his sisters, he urged them to take good care and love them the way they expect their children to love them. Next one, on September 3, 1896, Rizal finally left Manila. But before he left Manila, Blanco sent telegram to the Minister of Colonies, saying, "I have the honor of informing Your Excellency that Dr. Salazar E. Alonso has embarked on a vessel Isla de Panay, which will leave this port tomorrow, the 3rd of this month. We have instructed the management of the Compañía Transact, Transatlantico in the city that he is to be under close surveillance during the trip that he is to be taken to civil governor of Barcelona." So, on September 30, 1896, he was officially ordered to stay in his cabin as a prisoner until further orders from Blanco come. So, Rizal was arrested before reaching Barcelona. He realized that he was fooled by the Spanish officials, that he made him write letter to his best friend. He was officially notified by the Captain Alemany that he should stay in his cabin until further orders from Manila. He graciously complied with the captain's directive. On October 3, 1896, Rizal arrived in Spain. Isla de Panay arrived in Barcelona. After exactly 30 days of travel, Isla de Panay arrived in Barcelona at 10 o'clock in the morning, with Rizal as a prisoner on board. When they arrived at Barcelona, the passengers were placed under quarantine for 3 days. He was kept under heavy guard in his cabin for 3 days. His jailer was no longer the ship captain but the military commander of Barcelona, who happened to be General Eulogio Despujol. On October 6, 1896, Isla de Panay passengers was allowed to land and Rizal was jailed at Castle Montjuic. At 3 o'clock in the morning, a sergeant woke Rizal up in his cabin, ordering him to prepare his baggage. At 4 o'clock, Rizal was whisked away from the boat by one military man and another one in civilian clothes. Rizal arrived at Montjuic at exactly 5 o'clock after 1 hour walk under heavy guard. At, two, at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, after staying in Montjuic for about 8 hours, Rizal was notified by the same officer called Tudela to get his baggage ready in order to board the boat SS Colon. Rizal had to do everything in a jiffy under threats and shouts of the captain. In the interview, which lasted about quarter of an hour, the bruised general told Rizal that he would be shipped back to Manila on board the transport ship Colon, which was leaving in the evening after the interview, which was leaving that evening. So at 8 a.m., Rizal was taken aboard Colon, which was full of soldiers and officers and their families. The boat was packed with soldiers and and it departed at 8 a.m. 8 p.m. pala. 8 p.m. Jose Rizal arrived Jose Rizal arrived in Manila on board the transport SS Colon and was taken into custody in Fort Santiago. So on November 3, 1896, Rizal arrived in Manila with the steamer Colon. Rizal was brought to Fort Santiago pending the prosecution of his case. After this time, the Spanish authorities were very much preoccupied with gathering the fabrication of evidences to be used against him. So on November 20, 1896, after fishing as much evidence as possible, the preliminary investigation on Rizal began. During the 5-day investigation, Rizal was informed of the charges against him before the judge, Advocate Colonel Francisco Olive. He was put under interrogation without the benefit of him knowing who testified against him. Presented before him were two kinds of evidences: documentary and testimonial. So, these are the documentary evidences. First one, Rizal's letters of his compatriots like Marcelo del Pilar and Antonio Luna, a poem, Kundiman, a Masonic document, two transcripts of speech of Katipuneros, Emilio Cinto and Jose Toriano Santiago. And the last one is Rizal's poem entitled Atalisay. The documentary evidences consisted of 15 exhibits. The testimonial evidences, on the other hand, were comprised of oral proofs provided by Martin Constantino, Aguedo del Rosario, Jose Reyes, Moises Salvador, Jose Dizon, Domingo Franco, Deodato Arellano, Pio Valenzuela, Antonio Salazar, Francisco Quizon, and Timoteo Paez. These evidences were endorsed by Colonel Olive to Governor Ramon Blanco, who designated Captain Rafael Dominguez as the judge advocate assigned with the task of deciding what corresponding actions should be done. Dominguez, after a brief review, transmitted the records to Don Nicolas de la Peña, the Judge Advocate General, for an opinion. Peña's recommendations were as follows. Rizal must be immediately sent to trial. He must be held in prison under necessary security. His properties must be issued with order of attachment and as indemnity. Rizal had to pay 1 million pesos. Rizal, instead of a civilian lawyer, only an army officer is allowed to defend Rizal. So, on December 11, 1896, he pleaded not guilty to the crime of rebellion, sedition, ad lig, and illegal association. On the 11th of December 1896, in the presence of his Spanish counsel, charges against Rizal were read. When asked regarding his sentiments or reaction on the charges, he replied that he does not question the jurisdiction of the court. He has nothing to amend except during his exile in Dapitan in 1892. He had not dealt in political matters. He has nothing to admit on the charges against him. He had nothing to admit on the declarations of witnesses he had not met nor knew against him. So that's it for Rizal's last trip abroad, and the next topic would be given to the next reporter.
My name is Chelmy Puba. I'm going to report the trial of Rizal. So, December 15, 1896, before the trial of Rizal. So Rizal wrote the controversial manifesto addressed to his countrymen, a letter denouncing bloody struggle and promoting education and industry as the best means to acquire independence. Rizal's manifesto. Fellow countrymen, upon my return from Spain, I learned that my name was being used as a rallying cry by some who had taken up arms. This information surprised and grieved me, but thinking that the whole affair was finished, I refrained from commenting on something that could no longer be reminded. Now rumors reach me that the disturbance have not ceased. It may be the person continued to use my name in good or in bad faith. If so, wishing to put a stop to this abuse and to advise the gullible, I hasten to address these lines to you, that the truth may be known. From the very beginning, when I first received information of what has being planned, I opposed it, I fought against it, and I made it clear that it was absolutely impossible. So, the manifesto, which used to convince Filipino to end the revolt, had 5 point. First point, Rizal absolved himself by declaring that he was never a part of revolution. His name was used to attract Filipino to join the revolution. Second, he was consulted about the planned revolution, but he advised the perpetrators to abandon it. Third, he wanted to stop the rebellion by offering the services to the people. Fourth, he condemned the revolution as ridiculous and barbarous. Fifth, uprising was not an option at the time, that reform should be the authorities' initiative, not the citizens. So, Rizal made it clear that the people's education quotient is inducing changes in society. So, ana ang ginapasabot ni Rizal sa iyang manifesto. Next is the trial of Rizal. On December 26, about 8 o'clock in the morning, the court-martial of Rizal commenced. The hearing was actually a kind of moro-moro, a planned trial wherein Rizal, before hearing his verdict, had already been prejudged, so na-judge na, na. So, unlike other accused, Rizal had not been allowed to know the people who witnessed against him. So, wala siya gi-allowed. So, the trial took place in Cuartel del España, a military building, which a court of composed of 7 military officers headed by Lieutenant Col Jose Tagores Arjona. Then, present at the courtroom were Jose Rizal, the 6 other officers in uniforms. So the 6 officers is including Captain Ricardo Munoz Arias, Captain Manuel Vergara, Captain Santiago Izquierdo Osorio, Captain Braulio Rodriguez Nunez, Captain Manuel Diaz Escribano, and Captain Fernando Perez Rodriguez, including Lieutenant Taviel de Andrade and Judge Advocate Captain Rafael Dominguez and Lieutenant Enriquez de Alcocer, the prosecuting attorney, and a number of spectators, including Josephine Bracken. After Judge Advocate Dominguez opened the trial, that it was followed by Attorney Alcocer's reiteration of the charges against Rizal, arguing the court that letter be punished with death. Accordingly, the 3 crimes accused to him were rebellion, sedition, and illegal association. The penalty is life imprisonment, death for rebellion and sedition, correctional imprisonment, fine of 325 to 3,250 pesetas for illegal association. So, Lieutenant David de Andrade, on the other hand, later took the floor reading his speech in defense of Rizal. To supplement this, Rizal read his own defense, which he wrote in his cell in Fort Santiago. According to Rizal, there was a 12 points to prove his innocence. So, nagsulat siya og 12 points defense para i-defense niya ang sarili. So, ang report na po is si Trisha Magayano. And that's all.
In defending himself, Rizal presented 12 arguments. So the first one is, as testified by Pio Valenzuela, Rizal was against rebellion. So Pio Valenzuela was one of the Katipunan leader. He was Bonifacio's emissary who tasked to persuade Rizal to support the rebellion. But Rizal counseled against the company that it is not the right time for a revolution and the conditions to succeed are still unattained. So in addition, Rizal refuses on taking part in that rebellion. The second one is, he had not written a letter addressed to the Katipunan comprising revolutionary elements. So Rizal refuses that he wrote a letter about revolution, and he insisted that he was unsuccessful in emphasizing the true sentiments of the people from below and launching the armed rebellion. The third one is, without his knowledge, his name was used by the Katipunan. If he really was guilty, he could have escaped while he was in Singapore. Rizal defended himself that his name has been used to gather the members together, and his portrait hung in each Katipunan Lodge Hall, and his name is used as a password among the society's highest members who were called Bayani. But all of these events had no Rizal's consent and also his knowledge. The fourth one is, if he was guilty, he should have left the country while in exile. He shouldn't have built a home, bought a parcel of land, or established a hospital in the Pitan. And also number 5, if he really was the leader of the revolution, the revolutionist should have consulted him. So it was very clear that he's not the leader of the revolution, especially to the fact that Rizal has a lot of time to escape from getting exile. He can live his life better in other country instead of building a home here in the Pitan, and he chose to fight for his innocence and hoping for his justice. The sixth one is, he did not deny that he wrote the bylaws of the La Liga Filipina, but to make things clear, the organization was a civic association, not a revolutionary society. So here, Rizal stated about how La Liga Filipina, an association which is not established for a revolution, but it is established to unite Filipinos into a compact and homogeneous body. So next, the seventh one is, after the first meeting of La Liga, the association banished of his exile in the Pitan, thus did not last long. If the La Liga was reorganized 9 months later, he had no idea about it. So of course, La Liga Filipina will be disbanded due to different principles among its members after Rizal's confiscated reading materials. So even if it will reorganize through the efforts of Domingo Franco and Andres Bonifacio, still Rizal will have no idea about it since it's not updated anymore about the said association. So the ninth one is, if the La Liga had a revolutionary purpose, then Katipunan should not have been organized. So of course, it has no so this association has no revolutionary purpose because the main objective of La Liga Filipina was to build a new group that sought to involve the people directly in the reform movement. Through this, the group has been split, which become the way of organizing this group. So this La Liga Filipina is the reason why this Katipunan has formed or has been organized. So the 10th one is, if the Spanish authorities found his letters having bitter atmosphere, it was because in 1890 his family was being persecuted, resulting to their disposition of properties and deportation of all his brothers-in-law. So for me, it is just normal letters contain bitterness, especially if we are being harassed and maltreated. So in this case, it is not acceptable if they will question this as well. So number 11, he lived an exemplary life in the Pitan. The politico-military commanders and missionary priests in the province could attest to that. So here, Rizal tried his best to confirm that he lives an exemplary life in the Pitan, that many people can attest to that, for he will have no reasons why he want to commit the crimes that has been accusing to him. And lastly, number 12, if according to witnesses, the speech he delivered at the Doroteo Onghongko's house had inspired the revolution, then he want to confront these persons. If it really was for the revolution, then why did the Katipunan send an unfamiliar emissary to him in the Pitan? It is so because all his friends were aware that he never advocated violence. So it is very clear that there were a bias event that happens, that because of Rizal's goodness, many of his friends can attest to him as an innocent man. But the Katipunan sent an unfamiliar emissary instead of his friends because they know that this emissary that the Katipunan has sent to him will lead him more to that execution. But sad to say, despite all of it, his 12 defense has no power to prove his innocence, and still the military court judged Rizal as guilty of the charges and voted for his penalty. This is Governor General Camilo de Polavieja. So this is the one who approved the decision of Judge Advocate Nicolas de la Peña. He approved the decision of the court-martial and ordered Rizal to be shot at 7 o'clock in the morning of December 30 at Bagumbayan field. That is all about the trial of Rizal. Now let's proceed to the next reporter. They will help you to expand your knowledge about Rizal's martyrdom at Bagumbayan.
Good day, everyone. I am here today to continue the discussion of the Group 5 reporting. So, I will be discussing the last topic for our report, which is the Rizal's martyrdom at Bagumbayan. So, before we proceed with the discussion of the topic, let us first define what is martyrdom. So, martyrdom is the death or suffering of a martyr. And a martyr is someone who is persecuted and killed for advocating, renouncing, or refusing to renounce or advocate a religious belief or cause that is demanded by an outside party. And also, let us know what is Bagumbayan. Bagumbayan is a portmanteau of the Tagalog words Bago and Bayan, which means new town. It is called Bagumbayan during the Spanish colonial period. Bagumbayan was the usual venue for parades, battles, religious processions, and a display of wealth and power by Manila's elite. And it was also the place of execution for the enemies of Spain, just like what happened to Dr. Jose Rizal and the famous three priests, which is the Gomborza. The name Bagumbayan was then changed as Luneta or Luneta Park. It is called Luneta because the area looks like a crescent or a lunette. And in 1967, the Luneta National Park was renamed to Rizal Park with the signing of Proclamation number 299 by President Ferdinand Marcos, and then it was officially renamed Rizal Park in tribute to our Dr. Jose Rizal. And then so in this topic, there are the subtopics to be discussed are the last hours of Rizal, his last letters, poems, and the famous or the controversial retraction letter, and then his execution at Bagumbayan. So after being court-martialed, Rizal returned to his cell in Fort Santiago to prepare his rendezvous with destiny during his last 24 hours on earth from 6 a.m. of December 29 to 6 a.m. of December 30, 1896 rather. He was busy meeting visitors, which includes his family and friends, and he was also able to write his last poem that was his final contribution for the emancipation of the Filipino people. So this picture shows where Rizal was detained during his last days and hours. So the first picture shows the Fort Bonifacio, the prison cell from the Jose Rizal Museum, which is part of Fort Santiago in Intramuros, Manila, Philippines. Fort Santiago reserved as barracks for Spanish artillery soldiers during Spanish colonization of the islands. The second picture was the room originally used for storage of military supplies but then converted into Rizal's prison cell prior to his execution in 1896. And then the third picture shows the silid ng pagninilay, a gallery na museo ni Jose Rizal. So sa labas ng silid na iyon, ng gallery na iyon ay nakapaskil or nakalagay ang isang note na dyan nakakulong si Jose Rizal. So the museo ni Jose Rizal was reconstructed in 1953 after its destruction in World War II. So the museo ni Jose Rizal in Fort Santiago pays tribute to Jose Rizal through its theme settings and relics reflecting his life, achievements, and last hours before his execution. So these pictures are parts or like rooms or galleries inside the Museo ni Jose Rizal in Fort Santiago. So the museo has 5 galleries consisting the Silid Pagninilay, which contains his facsimiles of his letters to his siblings, parents, and colleagues. Second is the Silid Piitan, Silid Paglilitis, Kabayanihan, at Silid Pamana. So last hours of Rizal. In December 29, 1896, 6 a.m., Captain Rafael Rodriguez read Rizal's death sentence, which is he will be shot at the back by firing squad at 7 a.m. in Bagumbayan. And at 7 a.m., Rizal was moved or transferred to a prison cell where he spent his last moments. In that prison cell, there are religious images that they are hoping that through that religious images they will convince him to go back to the Catholic fold. And in 715, Rizal reminded Father Luis Viza the statuette of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, whom he carved as a student in Ateneo. And 8 a.m., Rizal had a breakfast with Father Antonio Rizal, and after his breakfast, his attorney, Lieutenant Luis Tabiel de Andrade, came. At 9 a.m., Father Federico Faura arrived. Rizal reminded the priest of his earlier prophecy about Rizal. So, Father Federico, siya yung taong nagsabi kay Rizal na he would lose his head for writing Noli Me Tangere, and it really came to truth because Rizal was executed because of his writings. And then Rizal told to him that, Father, you are indeed a prophet. And at 10 a.m., more Jesuit priests had visited him. After then, he was interviewed by Santiago Mataix for the newspaper El Heraldo de Madrid. At 12 o'clock to 3:30 p.m., Rizal was left alone in his cell. He took his lunch and continued writing his farewell poem, which he hid in an alcohol cooking stove. He also wrote his last letter to Professor Blumentritt. So during those time, Rizal wrote his last poem in a very small piece of paper, tapos itinago niya ito sa loob ng isang alcohol stove. So the untitled poem was later known as Mi Ultimo Adios, or in English, My Last Farewell. In its second stanza, he already praised the revolutionaries in the battlefield for giving their lives. It is stated that without doubt, without gloom. At 3:30 p.m., Father Vicente Balaguer returned to his cell and discussed with Rizal his retraction letter. So according to the account of the agent of the Corp de Vigilancia guarding Rizal's cell, Rizal signed what seems to be the document retracting his anti-Catholic writings and his memberships in Masonry. So this event is still a contentious issue among Rizal experts. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, his mother, Chidora Alonso, visited him. They had a very emotional encounter. Rizal gave the alcohol cooking stove to Trinidad, which contains his farewell poem. Several priests have visited him afterwards. So after his mother visited him, during his mother visited him, Trinidad entered to get her mother, and Rizal whispered to her in English, referring to the alcohol stove. There is something inside, he said to Narcisa. So while leaving for their carriages, an official handed over the alcohol stove to Narcisa. After their visits, just like what I've said, several priests have visited him. Those are Fathers Villa Clara and Stanislao March returned to the cell, followed by Father Rosal. At 6 p.m., Don Silvino Lopez, Dean of the Manila Cathedral, visited him, and at 8 p.m., Rizal had his last supper. He told Captain Dominguez that he forgave his enemies, including the military judges. So in this picture, it shows the original copy or original writing of the Mi Ultimo Adios. So on the afternoon of December 29, 1896, a day before Dr. Jose Rizal's execution, he was visited by his mother, Chidora Alonso, and his sister, Narcisa. And then he wrote his final poem on single paper, revealing his strong nationalism and unwavering love for his country, which was given to his sister Narcisa through the alcohol stove. At home, the Rizal ladies recovered a folded paper from the stove. On it was written an unsigned, untitled, and undated poem of 14 5-line stanzas. The Rizals reproduced copies of the poem and sent them to Rizal's friend in the country and abroad, which was Mariano Ponce. And then, originally, Rizal did not give a title for it, and it remained untitled. By virtue of logic and literary tradition, it would be titled by the words coming from the first line of the poem itself. But in 1897, Mariano Ponce in Hong Kong had a poem printed with the title Mi Ultimo Pensamiento. But nung nakarating rin kay Father Mariano Dacanay ang kopya ng poem ni Dr. Jose Rizal, which he was still in a prisoner in Bilibid. He published it in the first issue of La Independencia on September 25, 1895 with the title Mi Ultimo Adios. And that was the story why was the untitled last poem of Rizal was titled Mi Ultimo Adios. So the main message of the Mi Ultimo Adios poem is to tell the Filipinos how beautiful the Philippines is and how Rizal wants us to learn from our past and see the truth about how the world views us. So continuing to his rendezvous during his last hours at 9:30 in the evening, Rizal was visited by Don Gaspar Sestano, Fiscal of the Royal Audience de Manila. So according to the accounts, the fiscal left with a good impression of Rizal's intelligence and noble character. And then, next is the retraction letter. So first, let us know what is a retraction letter. So a retraction letter is a document that withdraws or resigns a previous claim or as a formal taking back something which was said or done. So, upon Rizal's death, his supposedly retraction letter became one of the most controversial documents in our history. This retraction letter allegedly contains his renunciation of the Masonry and his anti-Catholic religious ideas. Depending on whose side you are on, some Rizalist claims that it is fake while some believe it to be genuine. So the document of the retraction of Jose Rizal is being hotly debated as to its authenticity. But according to Father Balaguer, and Father Villaclara as they arrived in Rizal's prison cell around 10 o'clock in the morning on December 29, 1896. He mentioned that in his letter and affidavit that their encounter with Rizal started with a discussion of some articles of Catholic faith. So ipinaliwanag nila kay Rizal at nagkaroon sila ng debate tungkol sa uh, Catholic faith, and they explained to him that they could not administer the sacraments he needed without him signing a retraction letter and making a profession of faith. So the two Jesuits left the Rizal's prison cell around lunchtime dahil hindi pa rin nakakapag-decide si Rizal kung magsasign ba siya sa retraction letter or hindi. And then the Jesuit priest went straight to the Archbishop Palace and informed their superiors of what had transpired during their first meeting with Rizal. And then they returned again at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon dahil kinukumbinsi pa rin nila si Rizal, but then Rizal still did not sign the retraction letter. And in their third meeting with Rizal that took place at 10 o'clock that night on December 29, and it was during this meeting that they showed Rizal the two retraction templates Father Pai had given them. So, according to Father Balaguer, Rizal found the first template unacceptable dahil it is too long and yung lengguwahe at estilo ng pagkakasulat ay hindi siya akma sa personality ni Jose Rizal. So Father Balaguer withdrew it and offered a shorter one. And also, Rizal did not sign it right away because he was still uncomfortable with the statement, I abominate Masonry as a society reprobated by the Church. And that said, Rizal wanted to emphasize that the Philippine Masonry was not hostile to Catholicism and that Masonry in London did not require its members to renounce their faith. The Jesuit allowed Rizal to revise the retraction template, and his final revision read, I abominate Masonry as the enemy of the Church and reprobated by the same Church. After nila i-change yung mga template and draft ng retraction letter, Rizal together with Senior Fresno, Chief of the Picket, and Senior Maure, adjutant of the plaza, signed the retraction letter before midnight. But on the other hand, Rafael Palma, a prominent Mason, disputed the veracity of the document of the alleged retraction because it did not reflect Rizal's true character and beliefs. He regarded that the resurrected retraction story was a pious fraud, where, according to his analysis, the retraction letter of Rizal was hearsay with the following reasons. First, the documents of retraction were kept secret so that no one except the authorities was able to unsee it that time. And then second, when the family of Rizal asked for the original copy of the document as well as the certificate of canonical marriage with Josephine Bracken, both petitions were denied. And the third reason that he did not believe that the retraction was true, it was because Rizal's burial was kept secret, and in spite of what Rizal meant to be to the Filipinos and of what his conversion meant, no masses were said for his soul or funeral held by Catholics. So it was supposed to have signed by Jose Rizal before his death. There were many witnesses and most of them were Jesuits. that is what the claims of the Jesuits that stating that the retraction letter was true. The document only surfaced for public viewing on May 13, 1935, and it was found by Father Manuel A. Garcia. But the original document was never shown to the public, and then only reproductions of it. However, Father Payo Pai reported that as early as 1907, the retraction of Rizal was copied verbatim and published in Spain and reprinted in Manila. But also, si Father Garcia rin may ipinakita rin siyang original document, and also gumawa din siya ng verbatim copy of it. In both reproductions, there were conflicting versions of the text. Add to this, date of the signing was very clear in the original Spanish document which Rizal supposedly signed. The date was December 29, 1990. And then may lumabas na naman na original copy na ang nakalagay na date ay December 29, 1890 rather. So instead sa 0 yung inilagay nila sa 89C, the number 0 was evidently altered to make it look like letter C, and then may lumabas na naman na supposedly original version, and it was date December 29, 1896. So this time yung 0 ay naging 6 na. So others would like to believe that the purported retraction letter of Rizal was invented by the friars to deflect the heroism of Rizal, which was centered on the friars' abuses. But to conclude, whether or not Jose Rizal retracted the letter, the researchers believe that the retraction document was more of Rizal taking a moral courage and recognize his mistakes. Perhaps it may be true that the retracted and reverted to his faith, but this does not diminish Rizal's stature as a great hero with such greatness. And also, mentioned sa documentary na entitled Ang Bayaning Third World, sinabi in-impersonate ni Joel Torre told the time travelers that whether he retracted or not it does not change what he has already done and what his writings have already achieved. And also, sinabi din ni Senator Jose Jokno that surely whether Rizal died as a Catholic or an apostate adds or detracts nothing from his greatness as a Filipino. Catholic or Mason, Rizal is still Rizal, the hero who courted death to prove to those who deny our patriotism that we know how to die for our duty and our beliefs. So, there had been some evidences, but so far, this had only heated up the debate between the two factions. Up until now, pinagdidebatehan pa rin siya ng mga Rizalist at ng mga anti-Rizalist na kung totoo ba or hindi totoo ang retraction letter ni Jose Rizal. So, dyan po nagtatapos ang aking pag-uulat tungkol sa unang bahagi ng Rizal's Martyrdom at Bagumbayan. At ang kasunod na parte ng topic ay iuulat ni Miss Dorrance Rica. Thank you po.
So good day everyone. Today I am going to report the last hours of Rizal. So December 30, 1896, 3 a.m. Rizal heard Mass, confessed his sins, and took Holy Communion. So according to Father Belegwer, Rizal asked to have a confession, to hear a Mass, and be given Holy Communion. 5:30 a.m. he took his last breakfast, after which he wrote his last letters for his family and his brother Pasiano. So alas 5:30 ng umaga ang huling almusal ng ating babansang bayani na si Jose Rizal, at dito din ay ang paggawa niya ng liham para sa kanyang pamilya at sa nakakatandang kapatid na si Pasiano. So next. So, ito ang sulat ni Rizal para sa kanyang nakatandang kapatid na si Pasiano. Letter to Pasiano. Now, I am about to die, and it is to you I dedicate my last lines. To tell you how sad I am to leave you alone in life, burdened with the weight of the family and our old parents. So next. So 5:30 a.m., Josepine Bracken arrived together with Rizal's sister Josefa with tears in her eyes. Bade him farewell. Rizal embraced her for the last time, and before she left, Rizal gave her a last gift, a religious book, Imitation of Christ by Father Thomas Kempis. So 6 a.m. As the soldiers were getting ready to the death march to Bagumbayan, Rizal wrote his last letters to his beloved parents. So alas 6 ng umaga, dumating ang mga sundalo para magmarcha to Bagumbayan. Ay dito, sinusulat na ni Rizal ang sulat niya para sa kanyang pinakamamahal na mga magulang. So, next. So, ito ang sulat niya para sa kanyang pamilya. Ay, para sa kanyang father pala. Letter to his father. My beloved father, pardon me for the pain with which I repay you, for sorrows and sacrifices for my education. I did not want it, nor did I prefer it. Goodbye, father, goodbye. So dito, sinabi ni Rizal sa kanyang ama na labis siyang nagpapasalamat para sa sakripisyo, para lamang siya ay mapag-aral at naghihingi rin siya ng tawad dahil sa mga pasakit na dulot niya. At sa huli ay paalam na lamang ang masasabi niya sa kanyang ama. So next. To his mother, to my very dear mother, Senora Doña Chudora Alonso, 6 a.m. o'clock in the morning, December 30, 1896. So, sa next na page ay si Mr. Lerion na naman ang magre-report ito. That's all. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. So after we heard about the retraction letter, the last hours of Rizal, and also the letter to Pasiano, and also the letter to his mother. So this time I will discuss the death march to Bagumbayan. By the way, I'm John Lloyd, and I will discuss about the death march of Rizal to Bagumbayan. It is all about 6:30 a.m. A trumpet sounded at Fort Santiago, a signal to begin the death march to Bagumbayan. And then Rizal walked calmly with his defense counsel and also the two pressed at his side. He was dressed, that time makikita natin na nakasuot siya ng elegant na damit, with a black suit, black hat, and also the black shoes with white shirt, also a black tie. And there are a lot of spectators lining the street from Fort Santiago to Bagumbayan. And then as he was going through the narrow Postigo gate, Rizal looked at the sky and said to the one pressed, sinabi niya na, How beautiful it is today, Father. What morning could be more serene? How clear is Corregidor and the mountains of Cavite. On morning like this, I used to take a walk with my sweetheart. Ito yung sinabi niya sa isang pare. While he was passing in front of the Ateneo, he saw the college tower above the wall, and he asked, "Is that the Ateneo, Father?" And then the father replied, "Yes." So as you can see, this is the death march. This is the picture of a Rizal to Bagumbayan. And then Rizal bade farewell to the father's march and also the Villa Clara and to his defender, Luis Taviel de Andrade. Later I will discuss something about Luis Taviel Andrade, because there is there's a part na, kasi may mga nababasa kong mga article na may mga parang hindi natin alam doon sa time na yun. May mga pangyayari na hindi masyadong alam ng karamihan. So I will share it later. So he requested the commander of the firing squad that he be shot facing them. His request was denied, for the captain had implicit orders to shoot him at his back. So that time na yun, nag-request pa siya sa commander of sa firing squad na babarilin siya na nakaharap sa kanila. But this request was denied by a captain. And also Spanish military, doon sa time na yun, may isang Spanish military and also a physician, Dr. Felipe Ruiz Castillo, asked his permission to feel his pulse. So ayun, yung time na yun, chinek yung pulso niya. But he was amazed because they find it normal, showing that Jose Rizal was not afraid to die. And also, the death ruffles of the drum filled the air above the drum beats. The sharp command fire. So, yung time na yun na yung huling hininga ni Rizal, kasi yung time na yun is babaril na siya. And then the guns of the firing squad bark Rizal's with supreme effort, turned his bullet-riddled body to the right and also fell on the ground dead, with facing upward, facing the morning sun, and that was actually 7:30 in the morning. So, di ba, parang yung time na yun is parang nakakalungkot para sa atin, kasi yung time na is papatay na yung national hero natin. So that is the martyrdom of a hero. Martyrdom of a hero. So alam naman natin na that was 14 years. 14 years before his execution. Rizal predicted that he would die on December 30. Ayun, so alam naman natin na si Luis Taviel de Andrade ay may malaking part talaga sa life ni Rizal. He was the first lieutenant of the artillery and the younger brother of Lieutenant Jose Taviel, na naging bodyguard at kaibigan, especially naging lawyer pa ni Rizal. So malaki talaga ang naging part ni Luis Taviel sa buhay ni Rizal. And lalong-lalo na yung pare kanina, yung sinabi ko, his father Stanislao and also Father Jose Villaclara, di ba? So sa time na yun, so di ba, sa bago pa papatayin si Rizal, marami siyang mga letter para sa kanyang pamilya. And also, yun nga, yung sinulat niya yung letter to Ferdinand Blumentritt. And ayun, nabasa ng kanyang brother na, when you receive this letter, I shall be dead by them. Tomorrow at 7, I shall be shot, but I am innocent of the crime of rebellion. So yun nga, yung may nababasa kong ibang article na, especially yung The Times. So ayun, may mga specific instructions si Rizal because he wanted to be treated after his death. Kasama na din yun yung last wishes niya. And also doon din sa mga bulsa niya after niya patayin, kasi may mga nakukuha din ng mga unknown papers in his pocket and shoes on the eve of the execution. Because he did this because thinking that his corpse will be returned over to his family after the execution. But as we all know, his body was dumped by Spanish officials in an unmarked grave in Paco Cemetery. So yung mga papel na yun, may mga I think documents, may mga nakasulat pa doon eh. The papers had since hanggang sa ngayon, hindi pa nila alam and hindi pa nila na-identify because they are all deteriorated. So, ayun, may share din ako kasi after of the execution of Rizal, in 1898, the first Philippine President Emilio Aguinaldo, di ba alam naman natin, issued his first decree marking Rizal's death anniversary on December 30. On August 8, 1897, may nababasa kasi ako sa article, especially the Times, the Daily Telegraph, and the Reuters of 1896 na yung story ni Angulillo and also Canovas. Yung Canovas after killing the Spanish Prime Minister. Kasi the story nun is he is an Italian anarchist si Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, Michel or Michael Angulillo. So he was shot ranged by the Spanish Premier Antonio Canovas del Castillo outside a spa after being interrogated. So Goli said he killed Canovas to avenge his fellow anarchists who had been imprisoned and executed in the castle of Mintugic. Correct me if I'm wrong, that is part of the Barcelona din. So he also dedicated his act as a retribution of the death of Don Jose Rizal. Meron siyang, actually marami siyang mga cases doon sa Barcelona. Marami na siyang pinapatay ng mga anarchist din. So yun din ang dahilan kung bakit na-link si Rizal sa story ni Angulillo and also Canovas del Castillo, kasi he dedicated his act as a retribution for the death of Don Jose Rizal and expressed regret of his failure to kill Camillo de Falabella. Diba alam naman natin na may malaking part si Camillo sa Spanish event, and he also known as the Philippines. He also known in the Philippine history as the Rizal's executioner. And the Spanish Governor General under the Rizal was executed. So, ano nga ba ang dahilan kung bakit yung Italian assassin invoked Rizal's name after killing the Spanish Prime Minister? Because, ayun, makikita natin yan sa article na yun, dun sa sinabi ko, na in order to avenge Dr. Rizal, the insurgent leader who was executed in the Philippines, separate telegraph and an article that expressed the regret that he did not kill General Falabella for having caused the filibustering leader, so Rizal, to be shot. So yun lang. That is part kasi ng article din, and also na-link din sa story. Nasa sa story ni Dr. Jose Rizal. So that is the story of Jose Rizal, the death march of Jose Rizal to Bagumbayan, the martyrdom of a hero. And also, there can be no tyrants where are no slaves. Jose Rizal taken from El Filibusterismo. So, ayun. That's all for today. And thank you so much for listening. God bless you.